Hi, I'm Andrew Flannery, and I've been a property lawyer in New South Wales for over 30 years. And you're watching LegalBites. That's better CPD, as you need it, when you want it, in bite-sized chunks. And today we're going to continue our look at property law basics. We're going to look at the key terms in leases. And the first one we're looking at is outgoings. And this is part 2. So the roadmap for this little talk, we're going to talk about what's meant by a net rent, a gross rent, a semi-gross rent, and then as a bonus we'll have a look at triple net leases. So a bit of jargon first. What does net rent mean? Well, net rent is the way we talk about rent plus outgoings. You remember in the last episode we talked about what outgoings are, the operating expenses of running a building. So a tenant pays rent, and on top of the rent they pay outgoings. So think of it, maybe they're paying $900 a square metre for rent and then an extra $100 a square metre for outgoings. So the total rent and outgoings they pay is $1,000. Now, another type of rent is gross rent. And what we mean by that is the tenant just pays $1,000. And of that, there's a notional component of $100, which represents the outgoings. So the tenant just pays $1,000, irrespective of how much the outgoings are, but the gross amount of $1,000 is notionally split into $900 rent and $100 in outgoings. Now, I think that's fairly clear. Net rent, rent plus outgoings. Gross rent, total amount, notional split between them. But there's also a third category which is called semi-gross, and you can guess that that sits somewhere in between. What that means is that the landlord for year one strikes a gross amount and just says, tenant, I want you to pay me $1,000. But I've calculated this based on outgoings being $100 in the previous year. And if the outgoings increases above that, then I'm going to charge you the amount of the increase because I don't want to be out of pocket for outgoings. So for instance, if the outgoings amount moves from $100 to $110, then I want you to pay me the rent plus the extra 10 so that I'm not out of pocket for the outgoings. And the total amount the landlord receives would then be $1,000 and $10. So it's called semi-gross, or increases in outgoings. So, I need to tell you about the semi-gross problem. And it's basically a scam. All the lawyers know about it, all the agents know about it, but it's kind of small numbers, so we don't worry about it too much. But let me try and explain it. And to do that, I'm going to have to get my iPad working, so bear with me. All right, let's see how we go. Get the rubber. Imagine rent over a 5-year period. So we've got a lease that starts in 2000. Then we've got 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, say. So the rent in year 1 is $1,000. And that's notionally split into $900 and $100 for outgoings. And bearing in mind we get that $100 because in the base year of 1999, which was the year before 2000, outgoings equals $100. So that's our base year. 2001, the lease provides that the rent increases by 5%. So total rent goes up to $1,050. And that's notionally going to be $945 plus $105 in outgoings. Year 3, year 4, year 5.
$102.50, which is notionally $992 plus $110.25. Year 3,
notionally for outgoings. Now all of that looks fine and we can understand how that all works, but the lease also provides that the tenant pays increases in outgoings. So in this year, outgoings went up by about $5 a square metre. So we'll add on 5. This year, over the base year, outgoings per square metre have gone up about 110, about $10.25. So it's plus 10, this one plus 15, and this one plus 20 or 21. And in reality, it often goes up by more than that. If there have been large electricity increases, rate increases, any of those sorts of things, often this amount of the increase can be quite significant. And you may say, yeah, but it's just $20. But imagine if you have 40,000 square metres on a large industrial shed, times $20, suddenly becomes $800,000. Yeah, that's right. And if you capitalise that, that is to say if you sell the property and you applied a multiple of 5% cap rate to it or a multiple of 20 times, that suddenly becomes an increase in value on the asset of $16 million. So you can see how this little scam is really quite important, and on large properties over long periods of time it becomes significant. And you can imagine if this went on for say 30 years, that inequality between the original bargain of the parties and where they end up can be extreme. Now that doesn't normally happen, because normally in commercial leases, every 3 to 5 years there'd be a market rent review or there'd be an option exercise and everything would reset back to zero. And what happens then is that in our scenario, the base year would then become 2004, and in the year 2005, we really come back to this small problem that you're getting in year 1, 2, 3, 4. But over time, that divergence will happen again. So that's the semi-gross increases scam. Let's get rid of the iPad. And let's finish up by just talking about what is a triple net lease. And this is a bit of jargon that you'll hear around the traps sometime. It was really a creature that I came across during the wild days when everything was being securitized. We did a bunch of leases for Coles, where basically what Coles did had a terrific capacity to pay, a rated capacity to pay. So basically said, we're going to make sure that all of our leases are able to be securitized. So we'll make sure that the income stream that's payable under the leases, we'll put in place, we own property, we'll put in place a lease from a Coles rated organisation, and the rent is sacrosanct. Nothing can interfere with the rent. And we'll pay outgoings on top of that so that the landlord knows they will always receive rent. And of course, when you have that scenario, when you've got an income stream that's absolutely guaranteed, then you can securitise that income stream and sell it off, which we did for numerous properties back when I was a partner at Mallison's. So, triple net lease is a bit like the US Postal Service, where it says, neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. To which we all say, hoo-ha! Because they'd never actually met Louis DeJoy and Donald Trump. But nevertheless, it's a bit like that. Nothing stops the rent under a triple net lease. The tenant pays everything, just as if they were the owner. So, if there's rent to be paid, firstly, but if there's any land tax, tenant pays it. Council rates, tenant pays it. Repairs and maintenance, tenant pays everything. Structural repairs, capital replacement, tenant pays everything as if it were the owner. If there's any premiums for insurance, tenant pays it. Any management fees, tenant pays it. You're getting the idea. And the tenant also takes on all risk as if they were the owner. So imagine a situation where the building is hit by lightning, totally destroyed. Doesn't matter. Tenant pays the rent and tenant fixes the building. If the building floods and is unusable, doesn't matter. Tenant pays the rent. If there's some sort of moratorium where the government said tenants don't pay rent, doesn't matter. There's a guarantee and the guarantor pays that rent notwithstanding. Nothing interferes with the rent. And once you've got a guaranteed rental stream, securitise it, capitalise it, make a great deal of money. Okay. Net lease, gross lease, semi-gross, triple net. Please join me for the next one, where we're going to look at what to look for in the drafting of outgoings clauses. See you next time.